and anything else. And this is why I don't like Anonymous.
No, I don't. Well, I mean,
you've got all these thousands of people running around with a mask on, and the government are not in the least bit worried about that, because the government are thinking, well, if they're frightened of being identified, why the hell should we worry about them? But if there were thousands of people there who you could take their photograph, you can identify them, then the government are going to have to say to themselves, well, hold on a minute, they're not worried about being identified. They're coming for us. You know, we are the ones in trouble here, because they're obviously not worried about it, because they're coming for us, and they've said they're coming for us. And that's what I tell people, you know, I dislike Anonymous for that very reason.
If the Anonymous went round all carrying mirrors, it'd be a different story, but that stupid mask, and now it's how they make them, and the whole story to it all is just ludicrous.
What's that?
You know, the Million Mask March, the masks?
Yeah.
Have you been informed of, you know, the process of how they're made?
No, I have no idea.
Andy, would you like to tell him, Andy?
No, you carry on, PJ.
No, it's alright. You can tell him if you want.
How did it do?
I heard you chuckle your interest there, Andy.
No, it's alright. You carry on, PJ. I've just got to... I'm just attending to something.
Do I take it that it was a flop?
Say again, Albert?
I said, do I take it was a flop?
Wasn't it MGM or something?
It's no, Warner, is it not, Andy?
Yeah. What?
Yeah, Warner. They're made by 10-year-old children. They've got them burning plastics to make these masks.
Yeah. So basically it's child slave labour. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's all disgraceful, but I think that we've got enough problems of our own without worrying about the problems of other countries until we've sorted ourselves out.
That's it. No, just stating it's a bit, hypocritical to for the Anonymous to go around wearing these masks and, claim to do what they're doing.
Well, absolutely, but I mean, the way I look at it is quite simple, really, and it is, if you're going to complain about something, have the courage to be identified and stand up and say, no, this is me. I'm Charlie Brown. I live at 35 Acacia Avenue. You don't like what I'm saying? Fucking more tough. You don't like it. Get used to the idea. I don't like what you're doing, and I'm coming to sort you out.
Yeah.
And when people start doing that, that's when government will start getting itchy fingers and will start getting worried. At the moment, they're not worried because everybody's hiding behind a face mask.
Albert, can you drop your contact details in the chat box so I can add you on Skype? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Don't put it in chat box because it's a public channel, Albert, in case you don't want other people that come and go. Pick it up.
It's perfectly easy.
It's Albert.thingy2, but I'm trying to add you, Albert, and it won't...
Yeah, it's Albert.Burgess2.
Cool. Because I think Facebook, all the Facebook stuff's going to start getting pulled soon. The heat's really on Facebook, in fairness.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh.
Well, I think the government are really worried, and that's why they're starting to bring in... I
read an article earlier about alternative media and something to do with ISPs. We've got some new system features set up to detect these alternative media sources and have them look away.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the least bit technical.
You're on Skype, Albert. You're on Skype, so you're doing all right.
Doing great.
Well, no, I'm on Skype because my kids put me there. I mean, if it was up to me, when I wrote my book, I had it on my computer desktop downstairs. I was actually sat there and I was writing the book and that. And my daughter came up behind me, and she looked over my shoulder, and she said, "Dad, get out of the way. I've got to take pity on you. I can't stand it anymore." And she chucked me out of the chair. And then she completely revamped, laid out the book. She completely laid it out and she was the one who cropped all the pictures and put all the pictures in the various places and that, you know. And everybody says, well, it's really well laid out, which it is, and I like it. But
had anything to do with the KFM members lately, Albert? You had anything to do with Camp Freedom Movement?
I talk to them occasionally. I haven't been down there to do a talk recently.
Oh.
So I don't do the BCG anymore.
No, there's a fallout in that camp. There's allegations that Brian Garris ran off with all the money and Roger Hayes ain't that. Oh, it makes me laugh. It's like children.
Well, I mean, when Roger Hayes was the treasurer, I was in the BCG at the time, and he was the treasurer as well as the chairman. And people were paying their, I think it was at the time, 11 or 12 quid a year membership fee, and some of them were paying by PayPal, but an awful lot of them were just putting a cheque in the post. And when it came round to sorting the stuff out, there were no books kept. Roger never kept any books at all. And when he bought stuff, he just got a receipt for it, and he threw all the receipts in a cardboard box. But there was no rhyme nor reason about them. It didn't tell you on the receipt what it was for, just gave you an amount of money and the name of a shop or whatever, you know, a garage or whatever. And when we went to conferences, although his family owned their own car, he would hire a car, and what he was doing was hiring a top-of-the-range Vauxhall Invicta.
Yeah,
that's top of the range, isn't it? He would hire a top-of-the-range Vauxhall Invicta to go to the meetings with, and then he would run up a bar bill there, which he would pay for out of the BCG money.
See, that's right, mate. That ain't right.
No, of course it's not. And a friend of mine, Nick, was very, very patriotic, got a few bob, but he doesn't know how he could help. And so I said to him one day, I said, Nick, we've got to have a meeting with the BCG committee. I don't know how the hell we're going to get it organised, because, you know, I've spoken to Brian and them, and they don't seem to be interested in laying out any money for the meeting. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, he said, how many people will be there? I said, well, about half a dozen. So we found a bed and breakfast near where I live, which is fairly central, because Roger Hayes is up in Liverpool, John Galloway is in Shrewsbury, Brian Garris is in Plymouth, so Oxfordshire is fairly central. So we found a bed and breakfast there, and he booked and paid for 6 rooms, 25 quid a time for bed and breakfast. And we made it perfectly plain that you get your bed and breakfast paid for the couple of days that you were there, but your main meal you would have to buy yourself, and your bar bill was down to you. Because let's be fair about it, you might be in Oxfordshire, but whether you're in Oxfordshire or Plymouth, you've still got to buy your own dinner, haven't you?
Yeah, cool.
So that's what we did. Now I didn't stay in the hotel because I lived local, and Nick lives in Oxford, so I would go and pick Nick up in the morning and bring him down. Well, we went to the hotel, the bed and breakfast place, which is dedicated actually to Princess Diana. And they've got this big flagpole in the garden with a Union flag on it. And then some bloody jobsworth from the council came around and said, you can't keep that flag there, that's in a permanent position. You know, if you're going to put a flag up, it has to be moving all the time. So what the woman did was she had half a dozen holes sunk in a circle, right? And with one in the middle. And so every day they would lift the flagpole out, put it in a different hole. It was all within a 6-foot circumference circle. But you know, from outside in the street, you wouldn't know the flagpole had been moved. But it was all, and it used to move it round a different hole every day, and they're still doing it today, I think. But we got there. Nick and I got there early, and we were there the first 2 there. And then Roger Hayes arrived, and he went up to the bar, and he said to the barman, he said, have you got any bottles of Australian Red? And so the barman sort of thought about that one and vanished off down the cellar and came back with half a dozen different bottles of Australian Red. And then he selected a couple of bottles, and he said, put them on the British Constitution Group bill. And Roger Hayes then started to drink them. And I said to Roger, no, Roger, they're not going on the British Constitution Group bill. We were told up front that your bar bill was yours. Your evening meal and any other meals were yours. You had to pay for that yourself. But your bed and breakfast for the couple of days that we're having the meeting is being paid for. But you pay for your own bar bill and your own food on top of that. I'm absolutely convinced that Roger Hayes, who spent the entire weekend drinking wine, undoubtedly paid for it all on a credit card from the BCG. So when they couldn't get any joy out of him, they couldn't get any figures out of him at all, so they then go, another treasurer came in, John Galloway, who's a really nice bloke, John, ex-RAF, really nice bloke, and he just couldn't get any sense out of Roger Hayes at all. He couldn't get any figures out of him, he couldn't get any books out of him. And you know, John Galloway is actually the most mild-mannered man you could hope to meet, really. And he said to me one day, he said, I'm going to get a fucking baseball bat and I'm going to break both his fucking legs. You know, because I've got to have these figures. Anyway, all that Roger Hayes did was he came along one day with a cardboard box full up to the brim with seats.
And he wants to run bank.
But no idea what. Yes, well, of course, yes. but then he can't run a bank anyway because he's bankrupt. And in fact, talking about his bank, I have a tame barrister who helped me draw up the Maastricht treason allegations and all the rest of it. And he's very, very good. And when I see him, and if there's something worrying me, I just mention it to him, and he goes away and he looks it all up for me, and then writes me a report on it. And he doesn't charge me for it or anything else. He's a real patriot and really nice bloke. And every now and again, I take him out and I buy him a dinner, and we have a chat and a nice couple of hours together, you know. And he said to me, he said, "What do you think of Roger Hayes' lawful bank?" And I said to him, I said, "What do you think about it?" He said, "You tell me what you think first." And I said, "Well, what I'll do, I'll write on a piece of paper what I think it is, and then you tell me, and then you can turn the piece of paper over."
Yeah,
and
I think we've lost him again, Albert.
Who's that?
We've lost Dave again. So he's
yeah.
just going to reboot his phone and he'll come back.
Okay. So, anyway, I wrote on the piece of paper that I thought it was fraudulent, and pushed the paper over to him, and I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" He said, well, it's a good Section 17 of the Theft Act, which is fraud. So I'm convinced that the lawful bank is actually fraudulent. And if you look at it, what they do is they ask you for a £10 registration fee. So you pay them the £10, and then you get a little note back saying, right, you've been registered. And then you agree to send them £100 when they ask for it. So if you've got, say, 5,000 people, and they all send you £10, that's £50,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you then ask those 5,000 people for £100, that's £500,000. So that means now Roger is sat on £550,000. And what happens is you get your bill in for the gas company, your utility company, and you send it to Roger Hayes. Roger Hayes gets hold of the, say, British Gas, and he says, "We will pay your bill for you if you join our bank." Well, now, British Gas are not going to join his bank. They've already got their own bloody bank. So why the hell do they want to join Roger's bank? Yeah? So they say, no, get lost. So Roger refuses to pay the bill. Well, that's not going to faze British Gas, is it? Because they're simply going to take out a counter-court judgment against the householder who's paid Roger the money and whose money Roger is holding, yeah? And eventually, the householder is going to go to court and he's going to get the county court judgment against him because British Gas want their money and they're not going to play Roger Hayes' stupid game. So you get the county court order against them. But then Roger Hayes is sitting on £550,000 of other people's money. So what's to stop Roger Hayes transferring it all to an account in New Zealand, where his wife comes from, getting on a plane and going to New Zealand with his family, with £550,000 of everybody else's money? Then when you go to your local police station and you say, I want to report the theft of £110 by Roger Hayes, right? What's going to happen? The police are going to say, well, tell me about it. And you're going to tell him you paid a registration fee of £10. He's going to say, well, were you registered? You're going to say yes. Well, then you weren't stolen because you got what you asked for, right? So we're now just down to the £100. Now, the policeman's going to say to you, well, with respect, if you think that I am going to get an extradition warrant out to New Zealand to have him dragged back all the way from New Zealand over £100, you bloody well forget it, right? That's going to happen 5,000 times across the country. No police officers are going to get together and compare the fact that there are 5,000 people who've all lost £110, which is minimal as far as the police are concerned in your local police station. It's nothing. But collectively, it's an awful lot of money. And Roger Hayes is sat in New Zealand with £550,000 of somebody else's money. And there is not a snowball's chance in hell of getting him back.
Yeah, it's wasted money again. I mean, it's like, I think they've been giving £10 bonuses out for like Christmas bonuses to people. I mean, that's alright, fair enough, it's nice, you know, to get anything from them, but I mean, come on, £10, it's not really going to do much, is it?
No. But then you see, we've got the other thing that Brian Garish wanted me to do a talk up in Stoke-on-Trent. And the clutch went on my car, and I had no money. So I said to Brian, well, look, I can't get there, Brian. Any chance you could come by and pick me up and take me up and then drop me back again? Because he's coming from Plymouth, I live in Oxfordshire, you know, up the M40, up whatever. And he said no, because he didn't come that way. He goes all round the outside and it's miles out of his way to come and collect me. So he said, I can't get there, but I want you to talk. So I said, well, I can't get there, Brian, and I don't have the money for a clutch. So he said, well, how much is a clutch? I said, 180 quid. So he sent me 180 quid. So I got the clutch so I could go up, so I could do the talk.
That's good of him.
Right? Well, not really. He wanted me to do the talk, right? So everybody else got a speaker's fee when they talked at the British Constitution Group. I never ever got a speaker's fee. John Harris used to get £100 every time he spoke at British Constitution Group thing. I never got a penny. And normally I pay my own petrol up there, my own bar bills and all the rest of it. So this was just a one-off clutch to get me up there to talk. So that's fair enough. Then he sent David Barmby £300 to advertise the book. Now, I never saw that £300. It never came to me, I never saw it. It was sent to David Barmby to advertise the book. David was the publisher of the book. I was the author, he was the publisher. And I never saw it. There was no advertising done. And then when Brian gets annoyed with me over something, he goes around telling everybody that he gave me £300 for the book. And I said, you know, I have not seen your £300. I know nothing about. I know that you sent it to David Barmby. Take it up with David Barmby. I don't know what's happened with that book. Now, when we got somebody else, we were given a really good price to get a load of books printed. And David Noakes, who used to be with Brian Garish, they fell out big time, is actually doing very well now and he's quite well off. And he's a friend of mine. And I said to David, any chance you could subsidise getting these books printed? And he said, how much? And I said, well, it's £800 for 1,000 books. So he said, okay. So he sent me a cheque for £800, which we then got the books printed. When we got to the publishers, the printers, They said, well, for another £200, we'll do you another 500 books. So I put £100 in, and Dave Barmby put £100 in. And Dave Barmby had £100 worth of books. But that £100, I think, came out to £300 that Brian Garish gave him. But the books cost us now 60p each to get published. But David Barmby, when he sells them for £5 each. So, you know, but I certainly didn't get any of the £300. I certainly didn't. You know, but Brian Garish is adamant that I got £300 and they paid for a new clutch for my car and they did this and they've given me that and they've given me the other. Most of it is bullshit. Yeah, they did pay for a clutch, but they paid for a clutch because they wanted me to drive 150 miles from where I live to Stoke-on-Trent in order to do the talks over a 2-day period. You know, so basically that was it, really.
Yeah, well, you know, it's understandable, you know, to expect obstacles and hurdles, but whenever you're putting money into a scenario, then things is, you know, it's vulnerable, isn't it? To have, you know, situations
you see, I don't handle money. I mean, you know, people say to me, oh, you know, will you take over this and look after the money for this and that and the other? And I say, absolutely no way.
No.
I don't like money, I don't understand money, I don't know anything about money. All I know is I've never bloody got any.
It's like when your neighbour knocks on your door. I'm going away for a fortnight. Is there any chance you can look after me key? No thanks.
Yeah.
No thanks, love. You're alright.
Yeah. You know, so basically, you know, I don't do money because I don't want it coming back and kicking me in the fork, which I know it will.
You know. The amount of clubs that I've been in my younger days, football clubs, dart clubs, fishing clubs, and it's always the treasurer who ends up with the problems.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he was always accused of dipping in the tin.
What killed the trust?
Well, it always happens that way with the treasurer. I would never be a treasurer.
No, well, this is why I won't touch it. This is why I won't touch it. And you know, David Noakes, I was doing a talk up in Liverpool and he was talking as well, and I'll say he's doing very, very well financially. He's doing very, very well. He's got a house in the Channel Islands, he's got 2 yachts, he's got 11 cars, I think it is, whatever. He's doing very, very well. And he said to me at the talk, he said, how you doing, Albert? I said, oh, I'm fine, David. He said, how's the money situation? I said, oh, dire, like normal. He put his hand in his pocket, pulled out a Rout Wodger notes and gave it to me. He said, here, I have this, 750 quid, right? Then he sent me a cheque to make it up to 1,300 quid. So everything I spent for that money on the campaign, I catalogued it and I wrote it all down with all the receipts and everything else. And then I sent him photocopies of all the receipts and a complete breakdown of where the money had gone. And then David Noakes turned around and he said, oh, actually I was giving that to you personally, not for the campaign. But I spent the whole bloody lot on the campaign. And then sent him a full accounting for every penny he'd sent me, that he'd given me. You know? So, but I don't like dealing with money. I really don't. It's the road to ruin, money.
Yeah.
It is.
It's corruptible, isn't it?
Well, it's so easy to make a bloody mistake. Particularly if you're like me. I mean, I tell everybody I don't understand money. I've either got money or I haven't. If I've got it, I'm just as likely to give it away as spend it.
I used to work in a shop, and if you know any mistakes that you make on, you know, them pay point machines.
Yeah.
Well, any mistake you make on that will come out your wages. So I could be working all week long, and on last day, last minute, last 5 minutes, I'll make this £100 mistake, and I could be, you know, losing my wages for that week.
Yeah. Well, that actually is illegal.
What, for the for your employee to do that?
No, that's actually illegal to make you pay for that.
Oh, well, he did, time after time.
yeah, well, it's actually illegal.
Yeah, but I had to take responsibility for my own actions, and it that bettered me to do a better job.
No, you see, the fact of the matter is, the manager of your shop
would be insured for
has a vicarious liability to make sure that you do the job properly. And if you make a mistake and the company loses £100, £1,000, £10,000, it's a mistake that the manager of the company is responsible for. It's not your response. Your mistake, they sack you, whatever, but they can't make you pay the money. And if they sack you and say, well, we're not paying you the money because you owe us that amount of money, so we're taking it out of your wages, then you can go and have them arrested for theft. Because, they just can't do that. It's illegal.
Well, it's just to me, it's just as bad as when people have to pay now to withdraw money. I think I agree with that. I know it's a different...
Well, you wait for it. Negative interest will be here very soon. A few countries have got it, and if you want to keep your money in their bank, you'll have to pay for it. It's a mad world we're getting into. We're turning into a real mad world.
Yeah.
Negative interest, Albert. Negative interest. You'd have never thought of it, would you, really?
No.
It don't make sense.
It does to them.
Well, yeah, but you see, it's all to do with sleight of hand, isn't it, really?
Oh, very slight.
It's all to do with sleight of hand, and these people, they do all these things, and it's just how can we actually stitch some other bastard up?
Yes.
That's what it's all about, really. How can we stitch somebody else up? How can we do this? David Cameron is going on, isn't he, about people who are fiddling their income tax and not paying tax here, but quite a lot of his wealth, I saw today, is in an offshore account.
Yeah.
So, what have we got? And then, you've got other people like Michael Shrimpton, who's just been convicted in court, hasn't he, for making a bomb hoax, who's a barrister, but who's an absolute fucking water bitty, and he did a talk at Marlborough, which I was at, and I've got these sort of concealed recording devices, video cameras and sound recorders, and I've got a very nice microphone which clips on like a tie-pin. You can't even see it. And halfway through his talk, he said, right, we're going to Chatham House rules now, so can everybody turn off all their recording equipment? So everybody did except me. And he then proceeded to tell us that David Cameron's little baby who died had actually been murdered by an injection of prescription drugs into a feeding tube into the child's stomach. Well, I had it on tape. And so I went home and I put it onto a cassette. And then I walked in my local police station and I said, I'd like to talk to a policeman. What for? I want to report a murder. Got a couple of policemen come out, they took the tapes. And I said to the policeman when I gave him the tapes, I said, now I'm giving you this because I heard it and it was there and I've recorded it. And so I'm giving you the tapes as evidence, right? But I want you to understand this. If Michael Shrimpton was stood in front of me wearing a blue suit and he said to me, I am wearing a blue suit, I would not fucking believe him till I'd gone out and got a colour card and checked it. And then I got a detective inspector phone me up. I said, why didn't Mr. Shrimpton tell us this himself? I said, well, with respect, you better ask Mr. Shrimpton that. So then Mr. Shrimpton was all over the internet, because they did ask him that. Some bastard had reported him to the police. So I went on the internet and said, it wasn't some bastard, Mr. Shrimpton, it was me. You told me a child had been murdered. I can't keep that to myself. I have to report that to the police.
Yeah.
Had I been a serving police officer, you would not have got out of that room. You would have come with me to the nearest police station. Right? Had I been a serving police officer. You are a barrister. you are fully aware of what the requirements of the law are. You should have reported that to the police if you knew it. Anyway, the next thing you know, Michael Shrimpton left the country, went to move to Australia. Then he came back after a couple of years, when he'd been writing a book, which apparently is complete crap anyway. He contacts the police to tell them that there's a Russian nuclear warhead gone missing, that the jihadists have got it, and there's going to be a dirty bomb in London. Dirty nuclear bomb in London. Of course, the Russians haven't lost any warheads, and the police go and full-scale inquiry into it. Of course, find out it's all bloody moody. So they've then arrested him for wasting police time, for which he's been found guilty in court, for which he says he's going to appeal it. So good luck to him, but he won't get far with that one, I don't think.
No, it's not a simple matter to, you know, for warheads to go missing. I mean, viruses, fair enough, but warheads, you know, it's a bit of a...
you know, well, you know, I mean, the Russians know exactly how many warheads they've got. They know exactly where they are. You know, same as the Americans know exactly where they are. So, you know, if you're talking about Iran or somewhere like that, well, you know, what the fuck, you know, they're completely stupid anyway, so, you know, what are you going to do with that lot? You know? But I mean, it's like David Cameron and what's his name? Oh, God, who's that Yorkshire prat?
Haig.
Haig, yeah. You know, if the jihadists come back and they show a genuine remorse and a desire to stop other people going, we will help them to come back in. When the jihadists come back in, they should just line them up against the wall and put two in their head. You know, why take the chance? If it was a rabid bloody dog, you'd shoot it, wouldn't you? These people, they go out to the Middle East, they rape, pillage and murder their way around the Middle East, then they think they're going to come home here and be accepted and welcomed in with open arms. Sod that for a game of soldiers, you know. And now, of course, ISIS out there, when these people, the foreign people have gone over there to join in the jihad, decide that it's not actually what they thought it was. It's not all romance. It's too much blood and gore, and it's too deadly for them, and they don't actually like getting shot at. So they want to come home again. So now what are ISIS doing? ISIS are killing them themselves. They're not letting them come home. ISIS are cutting their bloody heads off.
Where did this all start, Albert?
But it all started with stupidity with government. That's where it started.
Did it start from the Mujahideen?
Oh, well, no. Churchill, years ago, you know, before the First World War, he was out in the Sudan, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. When General Gordon got chopped, Churchill went out in the Sudan as he was an army officer, but he went out there as a reporter to write articles, and he wrote a very good speech on Islam, and about the drawbacks of Islam, and all the rest of it. And there was, I think somebody from Britain First was reading out Churchill's speech and got arrested for hate crime. I mean, Churchill, the greatest ever Englishman for the last 300 years, and you know what they're saying is that this is a hate speech. It's not hate speech. It's what Churchill, who was the best prime minister we had for yonks, he was the right man at the right time in the right place. He was a good historian. I've got Churchill's History of the English-speaking peoples. I've got all the volumes of that. He's a good historian. He was a good politician. He was a good soldier. He was captured by the South Africans and managed to escape. Nobody else did. He did. Got back again. So, you know, I mean, he was a very enterprising, resourceful bloke, and very good. And he said, all his life that he felt he had a destiny. And his destiny was actually to save England, which is what he did. You know? And now, because he made a speech, he wrote this article about Islam and the evils of Islam and how they treat their women and how they do this and that and the other and how backwards it is. You're not allowed now to say that in the street. You know?
Didn't he write something changing the track a little bit about the EU, where he was in a speech?
Yes, he said. Yeah, he said what he said was that given the choice between this country joining in the EU or taking the wide Atlantic, we have to take the wide Atlantic.
But he did agree that it was a good idea to have a United States of Europe, though, didn't he?
Well, he did, but not for us. And what he actually said was, it's like the Human Rights Act. You see, the Human Rights Act was actually written by our people for use in Europe. It was written by our people because we had good human rights records. The Europeans had a shite human rights record. Look what the French did in the French Revolution. They murdered thousands and thousands of people for no reason whatsoever. Look what the Germans did in the Second World War. Look what the Italians were doing. You know, the human rights record of mainland Europe is shite with a big capital S. And so what they did was they transferred some English sensible law and legislation into the Human Rights Act, but it was never ever meant to be applied in this country because we didn't need it. We had Magna Carta, we had the Bill of Rights and everything else. And Churchill said that whenever things got out of hand in this country, people had always referred to Magna Carta and it had always come through and saved the country. You know, nowadays you go to court and you quote Magna Carta and the judge will tell you, oh, that doesn't count anymore. You know, somebody was told by a judge that the Bill of Rights it no longer mattered the Bill of Rights because it was made for a different era. So it's no longer the law of the country. But it is the law of the country. It's on the statute books as the law of the country. You know, and if the judge said that to me in a courtroom, then I would say to him, well, okay, that's fine. That's your view. I'm seizing the transcripts from the what you call them? Who's the bloody bird who takes the type notes, whatever. I'm seizing that, plus any film footage that's being taken in the court. I'm arresting you for treason contrary to the English Constitution. You know, because you can arrest a sitting judge for treason. It's the only thing you can arrest them for. But you can arrest a sitting judge for treason. So, you know, it's just, I don't know. I mean, there's so many of them have lost the plot, haven't they? You know?
Yeah, well, you know your constitutional law. You're serving police constable for your whatever time, and you served it out, and you got a good record. You're one of the very, 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 very few now, Albert.
I understand that. I understand that.
And you know, when you've got judges, magistrates, barristers, etc., running roughshod over the Constitution. If I was to stand up and accuse a judge for running over the Constitution, he'd say one more word out of you and I'll hold you in contempt of court. And if I sat down for asking questions, they'd say take him down.
Yeah, yeah. So, you see, I was giving evidence in court. My evidence was, I was on a drink drive. My evidence was, it's a magistrate's court with a stipendiary magistrate who's a qualified lawyer. And my evidence was that I first became aware of the vehicle when it was 300 to 400 yards away in front of me. And the magistrate said to me, was it 300 or 400 yards? And I said, well, with respect, Your Worship, it's very late at night on a very badly lit street, very dark night. The vehicle was coming directly towards me. My best estimate would be 300 to 400 yards. And he said to me, I don't want 300 to 400 yards, I want 300 or 400 yards. So I said to him, can I clarify a point with you? And he said, yes. I said, are you ordering me to change my evidence from 300 to 400 yards to 300 or 400 yards? And he said yes. And I said, would you like to reconsider that? And he said, why? I said, because if you persist in that, I will have no option but to step out of the witness box over to the bench, and I will have to arrest you for perverting the course of justice. And he sort of looked at me, and there was a huge intake of breath all round the courtroom. The court stenographer, who was typing away on her little machine, sort of looked up at me, total shock, horror, missed her pace with the typing, but very quickly picked it up again. And the magistrate said to me, he said, 300 to 400 yards will do. And then he found the guy guilty, which I thought he didn't have to. He could have said, no, not guilty. But having found him guilty, instead of giving him the sort of standard fine, which was between 120 and 150 quid, and a year's ban, he gave him a £350 fine and a 3-year ban. And I think actually the only reason he did that was because he was pissed off with me and he wanted to kick somebody. So he kicked the poor bloody driver. I felt quite sorry for the driver, actually.
Well, actually, it's funny because when you mention that, I think about when I was younger, I used to do a lot of driving, and one day a police officer pulled me over, and he said, I've got to pull you over. I said, what's the problem? He says, do you realise how fast you were going, and you were breaking the speed limit for it? I said, no, I didn't. I don't know how fast I was going. I said, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I was too busy looking where I was going and not looking at the speedometer. And he said, well, you know, you've got to have some idea about. I said, well, I was looking where I was going. I wasn't looking at the speedometer.
Well,
he just said, it's all right. He said, that's quite okay. He said, but, you know, just remember, if you're coming down this road, it's 40 miles an hour, and you were going about 45 to 50. And I said, well, I'll take your word for it, if that's the case. But I said, I couldn't tell you. It could have been 150 miles an hour, I don't know.
My dad were once stopped by a police officer for doing I think it were doing a 30. You were doing 38 on a 30 on a racing bike.
What, a motorcycle?
No, a pedal one.
Pedal cycle, yeah. Well, you see, pedal cyclists are still required to comply with the Road Traffic Act. And, you know, pedal cyclists, they get really upset if you stop them when they go through a red light. You know, and they think, well, you know, they're pedal cyclists, you know, you're not allowed to stop a pedal cyclist, are you? You know? You know, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And normally when a policeman tries to stop a pedal cyclist, they cycle round him. I had one tried that in Aylesbury with me one night. Two of these pedal cyclists with a Lycra and all the rest of it on were riding round Kingsbury Square like bloody lunatics, and one of them knocked an old lady over and just carried on riding, laughed and carried on riding, and I put my hand up for him to stop. He swung away from me. Well, I did no more. I got a 6-cell maglite in a belt loop on my belt, and I actually just picked it out of my belt and I sort of threw it as you would a cook under the Gurkha knife at his front wheel, and it went through his spokes. The lump on the head of the lamp caught in the spokes, wouldn't go right the way through, and it just carried the torch around until the torch came up and hit the forks. And then the front wheel stopped dead, and all the bloody spokes in the front wheel just went clonk, 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 and went over bollocks. And I went over and I gave him a bollocking for it, and told him if I tell him to stop, he's going to stop. And he said, well, what about my bike? What about the damage to my bike? I said, well, you know, if you want to put a complaint in about it, you put a complaint in about it. I will prosecute you for the offences that you've committed, and we'll see whether the fine covers the cost of the repair to your bike, because I'm certainly not going to pay for it. You might get it out of the chief constable, but you won't get it out of me, because you failed to stop for police. And I don't think the court would substantiate your argument, because you failed to stop for police. So it cost him a new wheel for his bike, basically.
Well, I expect common sense though, isn't there? Because it's not only you could be protecting him by pulling up and say, look mate, you just can't go for a red light. Somebody might hit you and kill you, or you could go for the red light and you might cause an accident and somebody else might get killed or hurt.
Well, that's just a point, you know.
But it comes back to common sense, basically.
Yeah.
That's all it is. If you run through a red light, there's a chance that you could perhaps cause a problem that way. So
I used to ride a really beat up looking Honda 250N Super Dream, which had a full fairing on it and panniers and all the business, but it was looked really beaten up. Mechanically, it was perfect. I used to get it serviced very regularly. And anything went wrong with it, went into the shop and got it done properly. But mechanically, it was absolutely perfect. I was driving down Marylebone Road in London, and this guy in a bloody Porsche cut me up something chronic. So I caught him up when he was stopped at the traffic lights, and I just politely said to him, look, you know, would you mind showing a bit more consideration to the road users? And I got such a mouthful, because here am I, some twat on a beaten up motorbike, and here he is in his nice big posh bloody £80,000 Porsche or whatever it was. And he started ranting and raving and effing and blinding at me. And I put my hand in my pocket, pulled out my warrant card and said, actually, I'm a police officer. I want to talk to you. Will you move the car over there, please? And of course, we moved the car over there and he said, oh, officer, I'm really sorry, officer, you know. I didn't realise you were a policeman. I would never have spoken to you if you were like a policeman, if you were like that. I said, oh, okay, so it's all right to speak to ordinary members of the public like that. Well, you know, and I said, okay, I want all your details, I'm going to report you. Because you can, and I reported him. I was off duty, but I reported him for summons for the offence, and he got found guilty in court. But basically, you know, people can be so arrogant because they've got money and they think that, you know, they're better than you, or they've got these bloody bicycles and they think that they don't have to worry about running old people or kids home over, or you know, or stopping for traffic lights or doing anything that, you know, they want to do. It's just horrendous, really. I mean, I hate bicycles. I hate bicycles. In fact, one of our area car drivers, he used to tell me that it was his dream one day to go home and every bicycle he passed on the way to pop it into the ditch.
That's not very nice. Come on, that's not very nice.
He actually was a very good policeman, as it happened, and a brilliant driver.
I'm sure he would like to think that, but I'm sure he could.
Yeah.
That. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But I mean, and he always said to me, because I always drive into parking spaces, supermarket, I never reverse into them. I drive into them forwards. And he always said to me, he said, you should never ever reverse where you can drive forward. And he said to me, if you're going into a parking space, like in an office block or something like that, drive into it face foot forward into it, because it's easier to reverse out of it than it is to reverse into it. And it's true.
Yeah.
You know, and I go to the supermarket and other people go there and I drive straight in, they reverse in, they spend forever reversing the bloody thing in, trying to get it lined up and everything else. I just drive straight in, get out the car, off to the shop, and then when I'm coming out, it just reverse it out, because it's easier to reverse out into a big area, isn't it, than it is to reverse into a small one.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and if anybody said to me about it, I said, well, I was taught by a police, advanced driver to do it that way. You know, but yeah.
It's again, you know, I think everybody has lost a lot of common sense. You know. Well,
I think there's a tremendous loss of common sense in the police force at the moment. I think I don't know where the hell they're getting their police officers from.
Well, I know my local area down here have put in for quite a lot of. I don't know. I think the commissioner or something has actually made a point that they must recruit some Eastern Europeans, specifically because of the amount of Eastern Europeans that are sort of in the area.
Well,
and language problems, and because of the language problems, and I'm going, what's wrong with people coming to this country, and if they're going to live here, what's wrong with learning English?
Well, absolutely right. And I mean, I stopped a car one night in Harlesden with two Asian gentlemen in it, and all I could get out of them was no English, only Hindi, no English, only Hindi. And I looked at the ground behind this Pakistani man's feet, and I said to him, "Oh, is that your £20 note down there?" And he straight away said, "Oh, yes, it is." And made a grab for it because there wasn't a £20 note on the floor. And I said, "Right, you lying bastard, let's start this conversation again, shall we?"
Yeah, they did that over in Sheffield in Page Earl. I don't know if you're familiar with news or what.
And the other policeman I was with, he said to me, Albert, he said, "That was absolutely bloody beautiful."
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think, Albert, you can challenge this so-called authority if they're acting in illegal ways. I mean, there's nothing wrong with challenging anybody.
Oh, absolutely not. And you know, I mean, but when you see, I never ever objected to people watching what I was doing. I never did. If they wanted to stand there and watch, they could stand there and watch. But I'd normally say to them, "Look, stand up against the wall. You can watch what I'm doing. You can see me perfectly well from there. Stand up against the wall. You can watch all the things you want to see. You're going to see. If you attempt to prevent me doing my job, I will arrest you, whether it's one of you or all of you." Do you know what I mean? I will arrest you. And I've had 50 or 60 West Indians there while I've been breathalyzing another West Indian, who actually, although he'd been drinking, he actually passed the breath test. And then I said to the other 50 or 60 who'd been standing against the wall, I said, "Look, I don't live here. My children do not live here. You live here and your children are here. I've just breathalyzed this man, and fortunately he's passed, so I'm going to let him go. However, it is your kids that are going to get run over by a drunken driver. It is your kids that are going to get killed. Not mine, because I don't live here." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the thing is, though, now, Albert, with the apathy as well of the people, a lot of people are scared to challenge authority now. This is the problem.
Well, it's because the police themselves have completely lost the plot, haven't they?
But they should actually welcome a challenge. It should be, because that's the only way that, you know, it's like a democracy. If people don't ask questions, it's not much of a democracy. You can't keep it on track, can you? Can't keep
No. But you see, you do, as you say, you do have to challenge authority. And in fact, what I tell people is, you know, if you're not happy with the policing in your area, you can change that. But what you need to do, you can't change it on your own so much. So what you do is you get yourself a tenants association or a neighbourhood watch committee going, and then you extend an invitation to the local area chief superintendent to come along, and to get him to bring the local inspector and the local home beat officer. So you've now got 3 policemen there. And before you go into the meeting, you organise it among yourselves, and this is going to be, let's get the police meeting. And what you do is you get all of your allegations, all of your complaints, all the things you're unhappy about, and you just chuck them, one person after another, chucks them at the chief superintendent. And then you make it perfectly plain to the chief superintendent that unless the policing standard in your area does not improve, you are going collectively, as a group of people, you are going to submit complaints about him individually, but there are so many complaints it will all accrue, and you are going after his job and his pension. Now, when he gets down the police station, he's going to kick the inspector all round the bloody police station because the inspector's dropped him in the shite, right? The inspector is going to kick the home beat policeman all round the police station because he'll say he's dropped him in the shite. And then what the home beat policeman's going to do is say to all the ordinary policemen on the reliefs and that, "Please, I'm in real bad trouble here, can you please spend extra time on my beat?" So then you're going to have more policemen walking there, more policemen driving there. You're going to get a higher standard of policing. Police are going to stop and catch more villains in that area, and that you get a higher standard of policing. The fact that they're not policing the area next to yours It's not your problem, is it? You know, and that's how you do it. You do it a bit at a time, and you go for the man at the top, and you tell him, I want your job. I'm coming for your job. And that's what you do, and it works every single time.
Can I ask you, Albert? What's your thought on devolution?
What of the country, you mean?
Yeah, handing everything back down to local areas.
Well, you see, they're not doing that, are they? What they want to do is they want to make it all down to regional authorities. What they want to do is they want to break England up into 9 separate regional authorities.
Yeah.
So that there won't be any England, so there won't be any House of Parliament. There won't be a Parliament. And in fact, what are they doing? They're preparing for that now, because they've suddenly announced, I think it was last week or the week before, they suddenly announced that the Houses of Parliament are in such a bad state of repair that they're going to have to move out of them. Because they're in such a bad state of repair. Now,
they've been saying that for many years.
Yes, I know. But you see, the point is that that's what they're saying, and they're going to have to move out of them. Now, that suits them, and it suits the European Union, because if they're not in the House of Parliament, where are they? Then it's not going to be Parliament anymore, is it, as far as anybody's concerned? If you don't meet in Palace of Westminster, it's not Parliament. Yeah. So basically, there is no Parliament then, and that means that we get direct rule from Europe. And these are the things you've got to watch out for.
No, I'm watching.
We keep trying to keep our. I think quite a lot of people are aware of it now, but of course they're going to rely on Farage getting so many seats that they're going to become at least the second party.
Well, I think Farage might well get the seats, but by the same token, I don't think Farage is even remotely interested in taking us out of Europe.
I think it's a smokescreen, Albert.
I think Farage is doing very nicely in Europe, thank you very much. If he gets a Westminster seat, he will still continue on as an MEP. So he will have a Westminster Member of Parliament and an MEP. So he's then getting MEP's expenses and wages. Then he'll be getting Westminster expenses and wages. Then he'll get a Westminster. If he only sticks in Parliament for 1 term at Westminster, he then gets his wages for Westminster for the rest of his life, and then he gets a European pension when he retires from there, which is even bigger than the Westminster pension. So Farage is just accruing money and money and money. Farage is only interested in Farage. I'll tell you that now. I don't actually like the man. I think he is sly. I think he's devious. I think he's underhand. He's a good showman and he's a good public speaker, but I think that he is not even remotely interested in this country. He's interested in Farage.
Yeah. He's like the majority of the members of Parliament. Although the one I hear, your favourite one, is stepping down next year.
Who's that?
Beast and Balls over.
Is he?
Yeah, apparently.
I'd vote for him as Prime Minister, you know.
Actually, I looked at his a YouTube video from 2009 when he was appointing to the then. I don't know if he was Chancellor straight away. 2 lines Osborne about the cocaine parties, and he was pointing the fingers over, and he had to leave. He was told to leave because he wouldn't retract the allegation.
I liked him when he turned around and he said, half the people in the benches opposite are crooks. and they turned around and they said, oh, you can't say that. He said, okay, half the people on the benches opposite are not crooks. Yeah, excellent. But I read something today that he's stepping down next year, unfortunately. Is he?
He's been there a long time, like you said before.
He's been there a very long time, but I'll guarantee, if you actually went through his books and everything else, I'll guarantee he's not claimed a penny that he wasn't absolutely entitled to. Mm-hmm. And I'll guarantee that he's done exactly what his constituents wanted him to do. He's looked after them as well as he could all through. And the one thing about Dennis Skinner, when it was Prime Minister's question times and that, didn't matter whether it was a Labour or Conservative Prime Minister, he used to give them hell every single time.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, I'll be back in a second.
Alright, Albert.
Has Doc gone to sleep?
Either that or he's listening in.
He's chilling out. He's chilling out.
I had to take off. I've been listening.
Hey.
You're chilling out on your big screen, Doc.
Well, we're 2 hours in now, so if there's anything you want to say, Bock, it's what we've been discussing.
Yeah, I've just been chilling, man.
Good stuff.